Headland, president of the Waikiki Rough Water Swim Committee, and we are here at Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii, to talk to Hawaii's own Linda Kaiser about her incredible marathon swimming accomplishments. Linda is a member of the Hawaii Swimming Hall of Fame, the Hawaii Waterman Hall of Fame, and is a 2018 inductee into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Linda, let's start from the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and what was your first memory of swimming in the ocean?
I was born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii. It's on the Big Island. And first time I ever got in the water, I wasn't even walking yet. And they had a thermal spring near where we lived, and my dad used to take me there every afternoon and put me in the water and let me kick and just have a great time. I could swim pretty much before I could walk. We moved here to Oahu, and my dad used to take us to Hanauma Bay, and that's where I actually learned to swim in the ocean. And in the summertime, we used to have a group of moms that would bring us down to the natatorium every single day, and we'd spend the whole day swimming. We would wear the moms out, actually. They would take turns. So one would bring us, one would come take lunch to us, and we'd just swim and swim and swim and just have a great time.
Before you got into ocean swimming, you competed in other endurance sports. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was always a swimmer. Swimming was my background. I got into endurance sports because I'm not a sprinter. I don't go fast. So I've probably done 50 marathons, many half Ironmans. I've done 32 Tinman, which is Olympic distance triathlons, and one Ironman. And but I always loved swimming. I always come back to that. I love being in the water.
What was your first swimming competition?
I probably did the Waikiki Rough Water Swim in, I think it was 1984. I used to swim at Alamona Beach Park with a friend of mine, and he kind of talked me into it. And then I found a group that was connected with the Waikiki Swim Club that used to swim the course pretty much 2 or 3 times a week. And they just kind of took me under their wing, and we do the course, and it was fun. And things have to be fun. You can't be serious, otherwise you're not going to do it.
What inspired you to train for your first channel swim in Hawaii? What year was that, and what islands did you swim between?
Probably around 1987 or so, a friend of mine, Janice Vieira, was noticing that the guys were swimming channels. And it was basically just between Lanai and Maui, or Maui Molokai, in that triangle. And she kind of took me aside and said, hey, these guys are swimming channels. I don't see any women swimming the channels. Let's give it a try. If the guys can do it, we can do it. So in 1989, we did the first of our many channel swims. Janice was slower than I was, so we had separate boats, because we learned very fast that unless you want to swim with a slower swimmer, you do your own thing. So we swam from Lanai to Maui, and I thought I would be seeing all these big deep water fish. I really did. I thought I'd see like mahi and sailfish and swordfish, and didn't see a darn thing. It was actually kind of boring. But I got off of Lahaina, and the current was so strong, I could see cars going by on the highway, and I could not get past this current. So the boat captain said, let's just go down a little further and just kind of make your way across the current. Got through it, punched through it, got onto shore, got back on the boat, and went and found Janice, who had gone gotten in the current and gotten out at Black Rock, which is way down by the Sheraton. So that was my first channel experience. It wasn't momentous, but it was fun. It was really fun. I loved the training for it.
Linda, you and your good friend and swim partner Mike Spalding are the only people to have swum all 9 channels between the 8 major Hawaiian islands. Let's swim through each one of these channels in chronological order. Your second swim was 5 months later, the Pailolo Channel from Maui to Molokai.
Yes, finding boats and captains in that time was really hard. I mean, you're thinking this is before GPS, so you just had to find, say, a fisherman that had a boat or a friend of a friend and somebody who knew where you wanted to go and sort of how to get there. So somebody had suggested I call Mike Spalding because he lived on Maui and maybe he could help me out. So he said, yeah, I can get you a boat, not a problem. And so he says, but can I swim with you? And I didn't know him, and so I was kind of like, well, yeah, but it's my boat and you have to swim my pace. So he shows up and he brought a picnic. He had mango smoothies and peanut butter sandwiches. I'm looking at him going, oh, this may not be good. But it ended up that we have had a lifetime of awesome swimming experiences. I would not have done anything close to what I've been able to do without having Mike as my friend. He's just the most amazing man. We were about 45 minutes off of Molokai, swimming from Maui, and I got wrapped in a man-o-war under both armpits, and it hurt really bad. So the boat says, oh, we'll just stop and we'll feed you because it's feeding time anyway. And we go, okay. Now, be aware at this point, we didn't even think about having a kayak, so we're following the boat. So anyway, so the boat fed us and the boat's going off and into the distance, and along comes this dot. I look off to my left, and there's this little key coming up from the deep water. And I'm swimming along looking at it, and all of a sudden I realize it's a shark. It's a very big shark. And it's just coming straight up from the deep, getting bigger and bigger. And I'm looking at this thing, and after about 4 hours, your brain is kind of fried. And I go, no, that's a shark. That's a really big shark. And so I swam over to Mike and I grabbed him, and he looks at me and I go, there's a shark. And at this point we're looking at the boat going, hey, come back. And they're waving at us. And the shark is getting closer. And he's coming up to the surface and he turns and he's coming like right at us, but not in a fast or aggressive way. He's just coming at us. And so Mike grabs a hold of me and he's going to punch the shark. And I can still remember thinking, oh my God, Mike's going to hit the shark in the nose, his hand's going to go in his mouth, and the shark's going to bite off his arm. Well, the shark came closer, and as it got really close to us, we realized it's about a 12-foot Galapagos shark, and it goes underneath us, and we have to lift our feet out of the water, otherwise we would have touched it. So it goes underneath us, turns, come back. It did it 4 times. And Mike and I are just kind of moving around, it wasn't aggressive, it was just checking us out. Goes back after the 4th pass to where it came and goes straight down. Mike looks at me, I look at him, he goes, you okay? And I go, let's go. And of course at this point, then the boat comes back and goes, what's going on, guys? And we're like, too late. So we swim on about 45 minutes, get to the reef that's around Molokai. The boat goes, oh, come down here. There's a channel about 15 minutes farther down. Mike looks at me, I look at him, over the reef, 3 feet of water, get to shore. That's it, done.
After that big shark, it took you a little longer to try another one. To complete the triangle, you swam the Kolohe Channel from Molokai to Lanai.
Yes, and this was also done with Janice, but she was on her boat. So Janice and I swam the triangle. Mike was gone. He was off hiking Everest or hit the Kilimanjaro or something that time. So we were waiting for the window, and it was so windy, and we just had to wait and wait and wait for a really calm day. My brother became my escort driver that day, and we started out in the dark, went off this coast of Molokai, swam past this blinker buoy that people later told me was where they took the ashes to be scattered of people who had died, which was kind of unsettling. But anyway, so we're swimming along, and as the sun comes up, I notice there's something underneath me. And it's just swimming along, and it's not going away. I'm getting a little freaked out, and I'm like swimming and hyperventilating. And finally I told my brother, I says, there's something underneath me. I don't know what it is, but it's freaking me out. So he hands over his prized possession, his boat, to my feeder, who really doesn't know how to drive a boat. And my brother puts on his fins and swims with me. And finally he stops and goes, I can't keep up. You're gonna have to just figure this out. Which I finally did. It was my shadow. And it was not going away, and it was right underneath me. And finally, as the sun kind of moved, it did go away. But once I figured it out, it was like, oh, thank goodness. And off we went.
After Janice passed away in 2000, it took you 10 years to attempt another channel. This time with Lori Foster and Mike Spalding, Maui to Kaho'olawe. The second group to swim the channel and the first to swim this direction. Tell us about that one.
After Janice passed, it kind of took the motivation and the fun out of training and swimming. And I kind of got caught up in triathlons. And one day Mike Spalding called and he goes, how do you feel about swimming from Kaho'olawe to Maui? And I'm like, well, I don't think we're supposed to do that. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. We got it handled. So I said, oh, fine. Okay, let's do it. So Lori Foster kind of wanted to do a channel, so we kind of hooked up and we got to swimming together. So that she became my now swimming partner, training partner. So the week before we were supposed to do this swim, it got really windy and really gnarly. And Mike called me a few days before and said, so what do you think? And I go, Mike, I don't think we're gonna do it, man. It's really windy. And he goes, okay, let me go figure it out, because Mike lives on Maui. So he went out, sat on a rock somewhere, and kind of figured it all out, talked to some guys. And we had an escort guy that was gonna go come hell or high water. He was fine with it. Crusty old gnarly guy, his name is Jim Dixon. And so Mike calls me back and he goes, what about if we go from Maui to Kaho'olawe? He goes, it'll be epic. We can just body surf down all these waves. And I go, well, okay, I mean, let's try it. So the morning kind of got off to a bad start. Our feeder came late. We just got a late start, so which meant that the wind was even going to be gnarlier and bigger and the swells huge, but we didn't know that. So we motor up to our starting point, and it's just really calm because it's in the lee of the Haleakala. So we get in and we start swimming, and we see a shark right away, and it's like, oh, hello. They went away. So we get out into this channel, and I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, the swells were 20 to 30 feet, and we are literally body surfing down, and it's huge. and our feeder is throwing up, and we're not having a good time as far as trying to get our feeds. So the boat finally figured out a way that they put our feed in a safety buoy, ran a line 100 feet, and we would swim up to the buoy, grab our stuff, eat, drink, whatever, put everything back in the buoy, and then they'd reel it in. Thank goodness it was a really short swim. It was about 3.5 hours. But it was epic. It ended up being the most fun swim I've ever had, just because it was so big and it was so gnarly. And I know nobody else is ever going to do a swim like that. We were crazy. We were nuts. And as we got closer to Kaholavi, we had been told that that's where the big boys hang out. So don't be shocked if you see a big shark. And so Lori and I are swimming up, and all of a sudden this little puffer fish comes popping, just darting underneath us. I think we levitated 10 feet out of the water. It was just like, whoa, what was that? And then we started laughing. But then as we got closer to Kaholavi, it's sheer cliff. And we're looking for a place to land. And it's not fun because the boat can't get, I think it was like a mile or 2 miles, the boat had to stay offshore. And we finally found a place, jumped up on some rocks, said hello to Kaholavi, jumped back in. And then the problem was trying to get back on the boat. The boat was literally standing on its nose, bouncing out of the water. All of a sudden these dolphins come by, the boat just flattens out, and we just scrambled up onto the ladder, onto the boat, and hung on for dear life as this guy's just bolting back for shore and calmer water. That's that story.
For your next swim, Lori and Mike joined you along with Tom Robinson, the first swimmers ever to swim from Hawaii to Niihau, and your longest swim up to this point.
That was the most beautiful water I think I've ever swam in. We had dolphins come by us, check us out. We had a swimmer that volunteered to be a feeder, and she forgot to take her Dramamine, so she would feed us, go to the other side of the boat and throw up, and then come back and watch us. But that was beautiful water, and we had a great time. It was quite an accomplishment. Niihau is a privately owned island, so we did not have permission to land. But we figured if anybody approached us, we would tell them that we had the right to go to the high water mark. So we're done with the swim. Beautiful day, gorgeous water, and we're lying on the beach, just soaking up the sun. And I turn around and I go, Mike, there's a Humvee coming. I've never seen Mike Spalding move so fast. He sprinted to the water, and he's, leaving Lori and I and Tom behind him and sprinting for the boat. And we're jumping up going, oh my God, expecting bullets to be flying by us. And I guess these guys had seen our boat because it was pretty close inshore. And they were just kind of coming by to see what was going on, because it is a privately owned island. You do need permission, but like I said, if somebody had come up to us, we're swimmers, we're in swimsuits, we just swam from Kauai, first time ever, and but they never got close enough to us. We were sprinting for the boat as fast as we could, which wasn't very fast, but Bill Godding, Forrest Nelson, and Jen Schumacher tried it sometime later, and they were met on shore with guns. So, not a pretty picture. Something that I don't recommend people do is that swim. I mean, it's just, it's just not worth it.
Another first for you in fairly uncharted waters. Keala Kahiki, Kaho'olawe Tulanai.
Kaholavi is a protected island. Years ago, they used it as bombing practice for the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. So there's a lot of unexploded ordnance, and it has since been turned over to the PKO, which is the Protect Kaho'olawe organization. So there is, at this point, a $10,000 fine if you're caught trespassing. So this was way before that time. We did know some of the people in the Protect Kaho'olawe, and they kind of turned a blind eye, thankfully, to our just going up, getting out of the water, and then starting our swim. So the Kaho'olawe to Lanai swim, nobody had ever done it before. We didn't know what to expect. And Lori Foster, Mike, and myself started out. I think we had like 5 different weather changes and current changes. At one point, the escort driver said, if you don't start going right, you're going to miss the island. The current was pulling so strong. Mike had forgotten to tell us exactly how long it was. I think he said it was like maybe 12 miles or 10 miles. And every time we stop to feed, Lori Foster wants to know how much further. And I think at one point we were like at 10 miles and the guy goes, oh, you're halfway there. And Lori is like, what? And I looked at her and I go, just keep swimming. And she was so mad. And Mike was messing with his nutrition, so he was falling farther and farther behind. And we were getting mad at him because we were having to slow down. And finally I says, Mike, if you don't start eating something, then you're gonna get out. And I think he had a Snickers bar and perked up. Perfect commercial for Snickers bar. But we finally landed on Lanai, and it was like dusk. And Mike gathered us all up and he said, you know what, let's swim really close together. And when Mike says something like that, we all got real nervous. And we all kind of picked up the pace, got to the island, got back on the boat, and went back to Maui.
Then, what many consider to be the biggest, baddest water in the biggest body of water in the world, the Ka'i'i Channel. The fastest swim by a female. You were 57 years old at the time and the oldest by a long shot.
Thanks. So Mike Spalding, Kelly Gleason, and myself started out from La'au Point one night, and it was pretty washing machine and dark. And trying to keep the 3 of us together was a challenge. The escort boat driver was Jim Dixon. He doesn't like to stay real close to us, but we did have a kayaker. So we're swimming along and getting some stings right away. It wasn't bad, but we were getting stung. So about the second hour, the second feeding, just before the second feeding, I swallowed something. I, to this day, don't know what it was, and I'm just saying it was a jellyfish. And it did not go down well. And I'm swimming along, and all of a sudden, I do not feel good, like probably within 15 minutes of swallowing. And I stopped, and Mike kind of looks at me and I said, I don't feel good. I swallowed something. And then my stomach started to cramp, and my legs started to cramp. And when my legs started to cramp, I just told Mike, I said, I can't go on, I'm getting on the boat. And Kelly was like, no, just keep going. And I'm like, no, I can't, I'm out. So I get on the boat, and I start doing my dying fish impression. So I'm flopping around, I kind of have like contractions, and started throwing up. It took me 10 hours on the boat, just flopping around. I finally got to the point where I was dry heaving. I've never in my life been so sick. And I learned later that the boat captain was getting concerned. He was thinking about calling the Coast Guard to medevac me. But I could breathe, I could still breathe. But I was just flopping around. I just get tight and just levitate off the boat motor well. Finally, about 10 hours into it, we're getting closer. I'm feeling better. Can see the coast, and I start calling people. I'm going, hey, we got a couple more hours. We're going to go into Sandy Beach. come down and meet us. All of a sudden, I'm making phone calls, and we're like maybe a mile and a half offshore. I look up, and we're like way left of Sandy Beach. These guys have gotten caught in a current, and they're just like hauling down the coast. We finally got them close enough to Hanauma Bay where they were able to jump up on the rocks and get out of the water and make it a legal swim. Had they not done that, they would have gone around the corner to China Walls. Luckily, that coast, if the current's running, you can still get in, but it just takes you a lot longer. So I was pretty bummed. They did it, I didn't. Went back, took a shower, ate something, started thinking about it. And I'm like, well, I really need to get this done. Didn't want to waste all my training. So I called a guy that I knew that was going over the next weekend to escort the women's paddle race from Molokai to Oahu. And I said, I asked him, I said, are you going to escort? He goes, yes, we're going over on Saturday. And I said, could you go over on Friday, escort me on my swim, and then go back on Saturday, stay overnight, and get the paddlers escorted? He said, sure, I can do that, but if you don't finish, you're coming back to Molokai with us. And I'm like, oh, great. So that was a big incentive not to be on that boat for I don't know how many days. So we motored over to Molokai and started my swim. And it was pretty uneventful, actually. I kind of came in near where Robin Isayama came in when she did her swim. She was the first woman to complete that swim. But yeah, I did fine, I didn't get many stings. It was a pretty calm crossing, and finished coming up the beach at a place called Irma's. And that's my Molokai story.
Next up, the Alenuihaha Channel from the Big Island to Maui, an even bigger challenge. You did this one 6 months after Mike Spalding's swim was aborted after he was bitten by a cookie cutter shark, and you were on the boat helping him not die on his way back into Maui. In nearly 40 years, only 3 had attempted this swim. Tell us about it.
Probably not the smartest thing I've ever done. It's probably the scariest swim I've ever done. Just being in the water after what happened to Mike and seeing what happened to Mike was very, very disconcerting, to say the least. Mike had told me don't go until it was closer to light, so that when I got in the very deep part where he had been bitten, it would be lighter. And these cookie cutter sharks don't come out during the day, they just come out at night. And it was 8 o'clock at night when Mike got bit. And it was bad. It was really bad. So, of course, did I listen? No. We motored over to the starting point, which is Upolu Point, and anchored for a little while. And I just started talking to myself in my mind. I knew if I didn't get in the water and just start swimming, I'd probably not do it. So I told the guys, I said, we're going at 9. Let's just go. And jumped in that water. And there's these little things that keep hitting you all the time at night. Mike had told me about them, and he said, I think they're squid. They're little squid. So, of course, then the smaller fish coming up to eat the squid, the bigger fish come up to eat the littler fish, and then the predators come up, and you can't let your mind go there. And it's dark, and these things are hitting me, getting some stings, but not a lot. And I'm just thinking, oh, not good, not good. And just kept swimming. Finally, we got to daylight. And that was probably not real good either, because then you could see what was underneath you. And a lot of sharks. So kept swimming, and it's getting closer. And amazingly, there wasn't a lot of current, so we pretty much went straight across. It was like a 16-hour, little maybe over 16:10, something like that. But a lot of sharks. That's all I can keep saying is a lot of sharks. And as we're about 2 miles from shore, this shark is coming up, fin out of the water. I mean, I can see it coming. The guys in the boat are screaming at me. At that point, I didn't have a kayaker. We were kind of like changing out. And the guys are like, get in the boat, get in the boat. And I snapped. I go, I've been swimming for how many hours? Through the dark, through these things hitting me. I said, no, I'm not getting anywhere near this boat. This shark wants me. I'm going to hurt it. I remember it was just, I snapped. And this shark's just swimming up, not fast. He's just gonna check me out. And I'm swimming as fast as I can towards it. And the guys are like, no! And the shark at the last minute just kind of goes around past me. And I stick my hand out and run my hand down his body. And as it goes by, I'm going, what the hell are you doing? And the shark just goes its way, and I'm like looking underneath me and back behind me, and just started swimming to shore. The guy got in his kayak and he's going, get into shore now. And I'm like, no problem. Jumped up on a rock, went, yay, done. Over, no more.
Oahu to Hawaii, 72 miles. 2 people with 3 previous attempts at a solo swim. This one you did on a relay with Mike Spalding and 4 other swimmers. Nearly 2 days and nights. Tell us about that one.
That was an awful swim. Every single time we got in the water, we got stung mercilessly. I mean, it was not a happy trip. And we had thought we could do it in maybe 30 some odd hours. It took us just under 48 hours. It was horrible. Luckily, everybody got along. We had a good time, sort of. I don't know that anybody can do that solo. It was not fun. It was, like I said, we just got stung. And I remember I had the 6 in the morning, midnight, 6 in the morning, noon, 6 at night, and midnight. Yeah. So I had, some good times, some bad times. But I do remember Randy Brown was going to, he followed me so I handed off to him. And I remember at one point swimming along, and I could see him coming out to the deck of the boat, which was an awesome boat. It was Mike's catamaran. And we had a doctor on board and a cook and a bunch of hands, and we could go underneath and go to sleep. And it was, the boat was awesome. I can't say enough about that. But at one point, I'm swimming along and I'm looking at Randy. He's coming on deck. He's getting his jammers on and cleaning his goggles. And I'm like, oh, thank God, I'm getting out pretty soon. And I'm looking at him. And I took a stroke, looked at him, put my head in the water, took another stroke, looked at him again, put my head in the water, and there's a shark directly underneath me. It was like looking at a box with teeth and eyes. And his head was wider than my hip. So it was a big shark. I had no idea. I never saw its body. So it was completely straight up and down. And I wasn't scared at the time, but I was so startled that it was not there. Took a breath and it was there. And I leaped for the boat and, screamed shark, just because it was a different, it wasn't that I was scared. Like I said, it was just startling. It was nothing there, and then there was something there. But to this day, I can still see those eyes and those teeth and it was just as flat as could be. And so they said, well, what kind of shark was it? And I said, I don't know, I never saw its body. And so when I got done, I talked to my brother, who's a big shark expert, and he goes, oh, that would have been a tiger. And he said, that's how they get their prey, is they come straight up underneath it. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. And thinking, at any point that shark could have taken me out. I mean, it just came up and I, for some reason, didn't want me. But that was pretty humbling and pretty scary. And I still see that shark. I still see him.
You've swam with many of the world's top channel swimmers in Hawaii over the decades and advised many, many more, from Harry Huffaker to Mike Spalding to Stephen Redmond and Adam Walker. Can you take us down memory lane and give us some insight to these swimmers and their swims?
Many years ago, Bill Gotti and I started the Molokai Ka'iwi Channel Swimmers Association. And our main goal is to help, with no charge, swimmers who are coming here to do the Ka'iwi Channel. It's also known as the Channel of Bones. There was no resources before us for these swimmers to contact people for boats, for advice. So we just want to help people. We want to help them, and then we want to meet them, and we want to talk story and just do whatever we can to make their swim as easy as possible for them. Stephen Redmond had tried one time and hadn't finished the Kiwi Channel. So I think he went over, he did the Tsugaru Strait, and then came back to Hawaii. And he stayed at my house for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. His wife came in the night he started his swim. I went to the airport, picked her up. He ended up finishing at China Walls, and we still keep in touch to this day. He's such a nice man. And I'm so glad he was the first to do the Ocean 7. Adam Walker, that was quite a tale. He had a bad escort driver, and once he passed Sandy Beach, the escort driver wasn't really familiar with any of the landmarks. So I called the boat, got in touch with him and said, okay, well, bring him into China Walls. That didn't happen. They were way too far outside, and he was in a current. And he just kept going towards Diamond Head. And he ended up coming in at Diamond Head Lighthouse, and nobody else has done that before. In the dark, over the reef. Kim Chambers, same thing. She came in, she got caught in a current, couldn't make it to Sandy Beach, came in at China Walls. I picked her up at China Walls and took her back to her hotel. Let's see, Liz Fry and Marcy McDonald, same thing, picked them up at Sandy Beach. A lot of the people just, we'll just pick them up and take them back to their hotel or take them someplace where they can get something to eat. They'll come back to my house, take a shower. Tony Enderly and Sarah Ferguson stayed at my place for 2 or 3 weeks. I have a spare bedroom, so if I have the opportunity, I like to meet people. I like to talk to them. I don't travel much, and I want them to experience my Hawaii and my waters and just have a great time. So it's just something I do. It's something I like to do. It gives me joy, and just to meet people and talk to them and hear their experiences. And people that swim in cold water, you guys are all nuts.
Teo Nakama was the first person to ever cross the Ka'iwi Channel, but he finished in Hanauma Bay.
I think I was about 15 years old, and my parents and everybody else on Oahu went to Hanauma Bay to watch this man finish. And I can remember the cars lining the side of the bay. And as he came in, all the car horns were honking and people were cheering. And I looked at that and I went, I want to do that someday. I really want to do that someday. How weird is that?
You also volunteer in a number of other events in Hawaii, including the Waikiki Rough Water Swim. Can you describe the open water swimming community in Hawaii for people who are not familiar with swims on Oahu, Hawaii, Maui, and the Big Island?
The Waikiki Rough Water Swim will be this year the 49th year. I've been involved as a volunteer with that organization for over 30 years. And it's really opened my eyes as to a lot of the problems, liabilities, potential bad things happening type of thing in the swim communities. So I've become very safety conscious as far as swims that are put on around the state. There's a lot of swims that go on that do not have enough safety personnel, in my opinion. But the water is beautiful. We used to have probably between 1,000 and 1,200 entries for most of the races here on Oahu. The other islands are much smaller for open water, and there's hardly any on Maui because of the liability costs. So, it's kind of sad that we've come to that point, but it's where we're going. Kauai has a few swims, Big Island has a few swims. The waters over there are just so beautiful. And having a smaller group makes it a lot easier, not only to control, but to facilitate safety. So the more people you have, the more safety people you have to have too.
You have swum all over the state of Hawaii. Are there any characteristics that stand out when you swim around the different islands of the state and when you have competed on the mainland?
Here in Hawaii, the swimming community is very intimate, very small. We pretty much all know each other. So when you go to the mainland, I've done Alcatraz, I've done La Jolla Gatorman quite a few times. I've done the Lake Mead swim. People are friendly, but it's not the ohana, the family feel that we have here in Hawaii. And I think people on the mainland are more competitive. I think they have their own agendas, whereas a lot of the people here that swim just swim for the love of it. We just love being in the ocean, and we love competing just to have fun. I mean, I think we have different goals than people on the mainland. I think people on the mainland, there are people that do it for fun, but I think there's more of them that are competitors, if that makes sense, as opposed to just having fun.
What does it mean to you to be honored by the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame?
I'm the only person in Hawaii, when I think about it, that has been honored by 3 different Hall of Fames. This is the first time I've ever been honored for anything international. So it's pretty humbling, and just to be recognized by this group is pretty awesome. I mean, here I am sitting in the middle of the Pacific, and this International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame comes knocking. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. And I thank them very, very much.
When I think of you and your remarkable career, I think of a channel swimmer first and an administrator and coach second. But you were honored as an honor administrator by the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Somehow I think you are so much more than an administrator.
You know, swimming got me into a lot of things and has broadened my perspective and realized that if you don't, I know it's a cliche, but if you don't give back to something that you're passionate about, not only does your passion die, but you don't give the expertise that you know, the knowledge that you know, you don't pass it on. So you've got to give back. You've got to spread your knowledge. You can't take it with you. You know, you just got to let people know that you can do this, or you can do that, or you can do it this way, and this is how I did it, but maybe you have a better way of doing it. So, you know, it kind of morphs. So the more people you help, the more I learn about not only them, how to do it better, but myself. So we just don't take it with you guys. Let's pass it on.
You've worked with swimmers from all over the world, including helping some swimmers that have swam the Ocean 7. In your discussions with them and in your experience, what do you think the differences are in swimming in waters like here in Hawaii and swimming in other places around the world?
Ocean 7 is very interesting in that I believe the Kaiwi Channel is the warmest of all of the 7 swims. In my opinion, a channel swim should be based on each swim and each swimmer and the conditions that they go through. I don't think that swim should be relegated to cold water or warm water. If, as a warm water swimmer, I go to swim something cold, I'm going to have a hard time. But if you, as a cold water swimmer, come here to Hawaii, you're going to have just as much trouble swimming in warm water because you just swim in cold water. I've talked to quite a few of the Ocean 7 swimmers and asked them, you know, how they compare the Kaiwi Channel with, say, the English Channel. Because I know a lot of people think the English Channel is the Mount Everest of marathon swims. But pretty much, I would say 99% of them have told me that the Kaiwi Channel has given them more problems than the English Channel. Warm water, I mean, it's hard to swim in warm water. Fran Crippen died in hot water. Yes, some people have died swimming the English Channel because they got hypothermia and didn't get out in time. But that shouldn't be the criteria to being inducted into halls of fame. If it's a cold water hall of fame, yeah, or the warm water hall of fame. But if it's an international where you're recognizing people from all over the world, then it should be based on your swim, your conditions, and not how cold it was or how warm it was, but currents, seas, how big were the seas, how many sharks, how many jellyfish. You know, it's so much more than just, well, how cold was the water, or how warm was the water. This is all in my opinion, and you know, people will differ, and you know, it doesn't matter. It's just my opinion.
And finally, Linda, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy, let's see. I want to be known as the woman who did it first, the woman or the person that helps others to achieve what their goals and their dreams. be known as somebody that helps whoever needs help, I guess. I don't know. Sounds good to me. All right.
You're gonna smell like.
I am.
Man.
Thanks, Jerry.
Really cute. We don't usually go for
It's gonna be like you graduated.
I know. Hello,
See you. Gonna swim tomorrow.
Love you.
Yeah.
See you by us.
Getting full. Getting full.
Yes.
You have to get a longer nap.
Portland in case you. All right.
We do a combination of so many different things, you know? That's great. That's really sad, Lexi.
You're okay. Can you see? Barely. I'm Marsha.
Yeah, we met.
We met. Congratulations. Thank you. You want to just take this home? No, put it on.
Put it on.
I want the whole experience, man.
All right.
I do.
Here we go, my sweet pea.
Hey, go something else.
Congratulations.
What are you talking about?
You're getting inducted in September.
I wasn't sure if the smell would bother you, but it's so nice. Okay, my sweet pea.
Thank you. You look beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Ryan.
Linda, it's just like you graduated again.
I know. I wish I could say I did.
Where are you going to go to college next year,
Yeah,
little girl?
yeah.
Full ride scholarship.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah. See, how am I going to do that? Yeah, sure.
And then that smile.
We'll be there. Okay, yeah, loose. Oh, that looks perfect. All right, okay. Yeah, I know, it's been a while. Okay, that's it.
No muscles.
No more.
Of course, the award that's written on paper, which you can all take a look at it afterwards, and this beautiful plaque that they gave all the individuals in London. And we'd love to give it to Linda now.
This is so awesome. I mean, I can't thank you guys enough. Really, this is really something. Thank you. See ya. Thanks for coming.
Travis.
Thank you. Okay.
I have to say smile.
Linda, we're so happy that you made this fantastic landmark of the International Hall of Swimming Fame. And we're so happy that we're here to celebrate with you. And it's so great to see all our old friends.
I thought it out. The puffer fish was
This big.
that big.
Really is this big.
Linda, you know, you've done a lot for Ryan and I. We did our channel swim. And I think back to that swim, the good advice you gave us, but more importantly, something you don't know, was every time I felt like giving up, I thought about you and how hard you worked and how much you accomplished, and that got me through it. Thanks a lot, Linda. I appreciate it, everything you've done for us and everything you do for swimming.